What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the UNC Basketball Show, brought to you by TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. Joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, really another jam-packed show ahead of us because there's a lot of things and concerns among Carolina fans and, a lot of things that happened following the Wake Forest game and during the Wake Forest game on Tuesday night. We're recording this on Wednesday evening that need to be kind of broke down and discussed. And I think there's a lot of negativity should be said around kind of the program in this year's team and the position they find themselves in at this very moment. So Carolina sitting at 15-9, 7-6 in ACC play. Number 45 in the NET rankings, 1-8 in Q1 games, have now lost 3 straight. I mean, AJ, the list goes on and on. I could sit here for a few minutes and rattle off some more kind of negative stats about where this team finds itself right now. But you and Brandon talked about it in 3 things last night. You wrote about it following the loss to Wake Forest. And that's kind of where I want to start because, to me, the number one issue last night, which was incredibly evident, and I think most Carolina fans will agree, and I know you agree, was chemistry.
Yeah.
I know they didn't shoot very well. They haven't shot very well. I know maybe they're not, assisting passing like they can. I know you can look at some of those intangibles of basketball and put a little blame on that as well. But at the end of the day, the number one issue was chemistry and effort last night. I know you mentioned to me very low communication, very little effort during the game from someone who was there in the stands. It was obviously very evident on TV right as well. So Carolina kind of finds themselves in a bit of a crossroads right now, AJ, because of the situation they're in and because of what lies ahead, which we'll talk about later. But talk to me more about last night being in the arena and just how evident it was that it just didn't really look like Carolina wanted to be there, AJ.
Well, they had all the appearances of a team that doesn't have great chemistry. It's not the first time we've seen that, but I think last night was one of those deals where they got opened up and all the bad stuff poured out.
Yeah.
And it sounded like that scene from Jaws when they open the shark and everything comes out. There's like a lunchbox in there and all whatever things the shark had swallowed over the course of time. Just everything pours out. I think that kind of happened with the Tar Heels last night, and it was supported by what the players told us afterward. So it's not just my perception of what I saw and what I've seen every game. I've been into all the games, talked to the players and Hubert afterward every time, and you accumulate thoughts. And a couple of weeks ago, I thought everything was slowly heading in the right direction, that this club had figured some stuff out and they were grinding their way through, and that at some point, maybe they would really hit a spring and just really play well.
Take off, yeah.
Everybody, the main people who cover this program kind of all agreed. We were talking the other day about, man, I really thought that they were about to do that. Now they aren't. And that was after Duke, we had those conversations. After last night, the conversations are, they fell into a sinkhole, but the problem is that we don't know where the bottom of the sinkhole is. Mm-hmm. They're still plummeting right now, and they will until they get on the court and play actual game again, really until they practice first. It starts there because the chemistry is an issue. I look out on the court last night, dead balls, there's no communication. Mm. And I was down on the floor on the baseline during warmups. I actually thought they had a lot of energy during warmups. And the players said later, Armando said this, Caleb said, RJ, and even Hubert said it, that, they had great practices between Duke and last night. They had a great shoot around yesterday. There was a lot of joy and a lot of love, if you will. And then they get into the game and it doesn't translate because practice, there are no results for practice. Like there's no scoreboard that we get to see. They have scoreboards. They stat everything. They tally it all, but the world doesn't get to see it. Practices aren't on ESPN, but the game is. And the game is where everything is tallied and records are made or are kept that live in perpetuity. So whatever happens between really good practices, when guys are getting out and defending the perimeter, and when they're switching well on defense, and when they're actually communicating in practice, why that doesn't translate to the game, to me, is a clear example of a poor chemistry, a lack of chemistry.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's what Armando said. He said, we have bad chemistry. Caleb, we have bad chemistry. RJ, we have bad chemistry. I asked Puff. I'll go here. I'll say, and I said this in 3 things, but I'll say it again. Hubert was asked last night about Armando's comments about them not having chemistry. Mm-hmm. And Hubert, to his credit, agreed. A lot of times he was, I'm not going to get into stuff like that. But he agreed. He was asked a follow-up question, which was, is this a recent development, or is this something that has maybe been slowly building or been there for a while? Hubert looked down. You could see it on the video. Paused for, I think, 9 seconds.
That was a long time, yeah.
And then looked up and said, I don't know. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe he doesn't know, but because pinpointing it, that might be where he was going with that response. But at the same time, it also suggests that it has been going on for a while, because if it was fairly recent, that would have been an easier response. And it wasn't. He didn't respond that way. So, and I asked Puff afterward about that. And I said, has this been a recent thing, or has it been intermittent throughout the season, or there throughout the season? He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, this is not a direct quote, but yes, you could see in the performances this season that there's been something there.
Yeah.
So they've had some chemistry issues for a while, and I think it's reached a boiling point here recently in the last couple of days. Maybe last night was the tipping point of it. And Armando afterward, after Hubert spoke to the team for a long time, Armando spoke to the team and told them, look, if you're not all in, and he, you can list all the reasons to be all in. I don't need to list them all here. I think people listening, watching, understand that. Don't show up Thursday. Just leave, quit. If you're all in with everything, then show up Thursday. So everyone's going to show up. No one's going to not show up. Yeah. But does showing up mean that they're all in? No. They then have to perform and approach everything as if they're all in. And it's going to take a few games for us to see whether or not that's translated. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a while. So there are a lot of problems with this team right now. We can get into a lot of those things here, but I'm surprised that we who cover the team have now learned this here in the last couple of weeks when it wasn't apparent beforehand. We haven't been in the locker room as much on the road lately. They pull players out in the hallway, and perhaps that's one reason why. I have no idea. Maybe a lot of times the locker rooms on the road are very, very small, and maybe it's just easier for everyone and more comfortable for the players. I get it. I'm not assuming anything here. I get it. But, I didn't sense that there were huge problems a couple of weeks ago. But there are now, man. Like I said, the shark was ripped open and a ton of stuff came pouring out. And now you got to clean all that junk up. It doesn't smell good. It doesn't look good. It's messy. It's sloppy. And that's why one game against Clemson isn't going to fix it. It's going to take a while for this team to really show that the 37-minute meeting they had at the end of after the game last night, 37 minutes. And before anybody showered, they just sat there. It was Hubert, then Armando. It's going to take a while for whatever benefit they get from the words spoken in those 37 minutes to truly show themselves on the basketball court. It's going to take a while. 1-2 games, as good as the teams are that are coming in, I don't think that's it. It's going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah, and the issue, this team's obviously been compared to last year's team for a number of different reasons, which I don't need to go into. We've talked about how Carolina cut the cord earlier this year because I think they did from last year. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, I think it's a lot fewer now than it was maybe a week and a half ago, thinks that Carolina, this team can maybe, in this core group, can maybe turn things around is because of the run that happened last year. And I completely get that. I think the difference in what I'm getting to is you're saying it's going to take time, which is, of course it is. You're not just going to show up against Clemson and beat them by 30 and everything's rosy and you're going to, it's not going to happen that fast. There's too much going on right now, in my opinion, that you can't just fix it in 2 practices, however many times they practice before the Clemson game. But Carolina's got 9 losses already. NCAA tournament kind of hopes and situation, for lack of a better word, is completely up in the air, because fact of the matter is their two best wins are, which we've talked about, NC State, College of Charleston. It's not really that great of wins when you look at who they've played this year and the opportunities they've had to beat some good teams. But you've got a 7-game stretch, AJ, coming up that is, I mean, arguably I know there was a very tough non-conference stretch early in the year, which was overall probably harder. But when you look at the teams that they have to play, Clemson and Miami at home coming up in the next 2 games, and then at NC State after that, not to mention at Notre Dame, Virginia at home, at Florida State, and Duke at home on senior night. It's kind of like, okay, well, you're kind of running out of time to begin with, but it's not like you're going to be playing the bottom feeders of the league coming up anyway, which Carolina has struggled with at times this year anyway. So it's not like those would be guaranteed wins in the first place. So you talk about, and I completely agree, it's going to take time if things are going to turn around. I think a lot of people, and I'm in the kind of belief that I don't personally think it is going to turn around, like in terms of winning a national championship. I don't see that happening right now. You'd be crazy to think after what you witnessed last night that Carolina's just going to flip a switch and win a national championship in a couple months. That's an insane thing to think. But it is an issue because, like I've said, like you've said, there's not a lot of time to kind of get your hand on this steering wheel and kind of steady the ship. And not only that, is you've got a lot of really tough games coming up to where, you know, AJ, if Carolina loses a couple more games, I mean, they're going to be very, very hard pressed to make the NCAA tournament. So, I mean, what do you make of kind of the time crunch that the Tar Heels are in? Because it's not like it's, January 8th right now. And you can be like, you know what, we still got some time. It's like, if you're going to figure it out, you got to figure it out now, and you got to start winning games now. I just don't know if this Carolina team's capable of doing that.
Well, I think that right now, thinking about the NCAA tournament would be a waste of time for this team, because it's using up gray matter that shouldn't be spent on that. And I'm not saying that because they won't make it. I'm saying it because that's not even on the radar. It should not be on the radar. All this should matter right now
things they need to fix.
Get 18 guys to show up to practice Thursday and play play for the other 17. Legitimately do that and have an airing of grievances. Maybe they need to have a Festivus get together with a poll and all that kind of stuff, and Frank Costanza screaming at everybody and having them all yell at each other.
It's not the worst idea I've heard, to be honest.
No, and even if they do beat Clemson by 30, I don't think it means that they've turned a corner at all. No. I think this has to be a sustained thing. And 1 game, 2 games, even if they beat Clemson, beat Miami, and win at State, that'll show perhaps where they should be. But if they turn around and go to Notre Dame and give up 14 threes and lose, then what does it mean? Mm-hmm. This team should be at a point right now where it would be getting into national championship mode, but it's not. What they're doing now is they have to rebuild everything. I was telling you earlier, before we did this, the analogy that I have is it's sort of like they've been kneading dough, and they're getting ready to put the bread in the oven and realize they're missing a couple of ingredients and have a couple of wrong ingredients in there. So what do? Do you scrap it and start over and start kneading dough and have to do it quickly because you have a time frame when you have to get the bread done, or you just stick it in the oven and hope it comes out okay? Mm-hmm. That's kind of where they are right now. And they have 18 ingredients plus the coaching staff. And they have to figure out a way to make the dough rise properly. And I mean, really, they're looking at saying, man, I can't believe I put that in there.
Yeah.
And oh crap, we're missing that. You don't put salt in too late because then it's not going to work. So that's kind of where they are. And we're not going to know what the effect of last night's conversations are for a couple of weeks. So people that jump on everything Saturday. Now, if they play like crap Saturday, have at it, man. Mm-hmm. And Armando opened the door last night, and he said the fans, quote, rightfully, quote, have a reason to be ticked off and upset. But because he gets it, he understands that they're playing for the university. And I heard the stuff that Seth Greenberg said. I saw it on Twitter. I got home at, 4. And
I was about to ask. It had to be late.
I hopped on my lap. Yeah, it's pretty cool because I actually worked in the media seat in press row seat, and they didn't kick me out, so I kept working. Got everything done before I left. So I came home and I was scanning through Twitter and I saw the Seth Greenberg thing, and he's 100% right. And Armando gets that. I mean, you're playing for everybody that ever wore the jersey. You're playing for that standard, and all the people who are responsible for bringing the program to the perch that it's on and making this stuff matter. And my point last night when I was talking with Brandon, the three things, this goes to Hubert and to the players. In Hubert's case, there has to be some anger. It has to be visual, it has to be apparent, because if you're Nebraska and you're 15-9 in the ACC and 7-6, you're pretty happy right now, regardless of what preseason expectations were, because Nebraska doesn't do that very often. If you're Ole Miss, same kind of thing, right? Yeah. If you're Oregon State, same kind of thing out there in the Pac-12. But this is North Carolina. It's a different animal. You're not supposed to be in these situations, especially when you're a head coach. And I asked him this in October. I said, the guys are all talking championship or bust. Are you okay with them saying that? That was my specific question. And he said, yeah, I got no problem with it. Because I don't see it that way, but it's okay if they do. So the same people involved with that have to figure out a way to recalibrate, and the coach has to lead the way. He's a second-year guy. He's never been in this situation before in this set of circumstances, so he's learning too. And so people need to show him that grace. But it's also an opportunity for him to corral the program and just drench it in his DNA. And if it's the right DNA, then they will more quickly fix the problems that are going on. And in doing so, he may have to make some really difficult decisions that he doesn't want to make. Maybe it's how you disperse playing time. Maybe it's tweaking the starting lineup. I thought last night was a perfect opportunity for him to pull Roy Williams and just pull the starters and put subs in and let them run. This was an opportunity to go ahead and take a 40-point loss for the sake of what's coming after this. But I was surprised he didn't do that. Now, he doesn't have to do it just because Roy did, but Roy's not the only one that did it. I will never forget. I was telling the story last night. Now, this is a long time ago, so some of the younger people probably don't even know who the hell Bobby Knight is. But when Bobby Knight was in Indiana, I'll never forget they had a game at Illinois like in the early, mid-'90s, and they were getting pounded at halftime. And Knight just said, screw it. I'm not putting the starters back in there. You guys don't deserve to play. And he played reserves and like the last five guys. The rest of the game, they lost by like 50. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look this up, but I believe Indiana won like 6 in a row after that.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to do that. You have to shake the tree enough that some stuff falls. If you just kind of nudge it a little bit, nothing falls, then you never really shook the tree, right?
Yeah.
So Hubert has to do that now, and the players have to do it. I think Armando did his part, and then the other guys backed it up. But now they have to show it on the floor, and if they don't, pull a guy out and put someone else in there. And if it means that you sacrifice another game, then he's got to do that, because I think the culture of the program might be determined here in the next few weeks, because the coach has to take over and be the leader. I remember in 2006, David Noel went to a tough stretch, and that team went through a tough stretch when he was the older guy. And Roy will tell you, he's one of the best leaders he ever had. But Noel went through a tough stretch, and Roy had to step in and be the leader of that team for a few weeks. And he was, and the ship got righted, and Noel was a phenomenal leader from that point on, right? This team, I think, is at that point right now, because Armando has spoken out before.
Yeah.
And it didn't really seep in. So it's Hubert's job now to speak out. This is his program. This is his team. He's changed enough things in how they do and changed enough in how they do things that it's on him. So he's got to step up, be the leader, and that's going to require him making tough decisions. And maybe you send some strong messages with some tough decisions. Coaches do it all the time. Right now is a perfect opportunity for Hubert to do that. So it'll be interesting to see if any of that happens, or if it's the status quo moving forward. If it's a status quo moving forward, I have less of a belief that this team will fully fix things. Now, it doesn't have to be a tweak and keep it that way forever. Maybe you tweak stuff for a game, send a message for a game or two, and then you get back to what you think should be the the lineup or minute distribution. And perhaps that message is sent enough that it then works, because he hopes a lot. He's always talking about what he hopes. And the team that he hopes takes the floor going into March might need to have some significant shaking done right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I want to expand on that a little bit before we kind of look ahead towards the end of the next two games at Clemson and Miami coming up. But the reason I want to say this is obviously we're on Twitter, we're on the boards, and to me there seems to be a division right now. I think it was super evident last night where it was either everything's Hubert's fault or all these players are horrible. One side of the fence, you didn't sit in the middle. And to me, the truth is somewhere in the middle there. I think this is a super talented North Carolina team. I don't think Hubert Davis is the reason that, Caleb Love's going out there on a consistent basis and shooting as poorly as he is, or RJ's having a poor stretch that he's having, or Nance hadn't been able to figure it out. It's not like it's his fault that he's not doing that. It's somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of issues with this team. Now, to me, the number one job of a coach is getting the best out of what's at his disposal, getting the right tune out of his players, being able to manage those personalities, because there's so much more to playing basketball at this high level than just practicing your jump shot and practicing your rebounds and practicing, how you guys run your sets. It's about being in the right mindset going into the game in the first place, because if you're not in the right mindset, you're going to have games like Carolina had in Winston-Salem last night. So it's an interesting place that I think the outside looking in finds itself in, because like I said, I think that truth lies somewhere in the middle. Now, you talked about, well, how do they kind of right that ship? And I do agree. I think something has to change, something drastic from Hubert in terms of, this is my team. This is why I get paid the big bucks. This is why I'm the head honcho here. This is how we're going to do things. Armando made his message clear last night. We're going to set that standard, and we're going to meet that standard every day going into the rest of the season. I think that's a prime opportunity for Hubert Davis. And to me, AJ, I think that's what this team needs, because I don't really know how they're just going to figure it out if they just keep doing what they're doing. Like, well, yeah, the players will figure it out. Armando's calling these players out, and they'll come into practice on Thursday and they'll be great. Hubert can just sit back and, relax and just watch it all unfold. He has to step up in this moment and do something different, because he's not getting the tune out of the players right now. He's not getting a tune out of them. It's a talented team, but it's not happening. So to me, I think you said it before we came on, it's kind of a crossroads point, not only for this team, but kind of for Hubert and his trajectory moving forward, because something has to change. But I also think something from Hubert and the coaching staff and the way they're going about these games, sending the messages, I think that has to change too, because what's happening right now, I think it's pretty safe to say, AJ, it's not working very well, is it?
It's not at this moment, no. We often just tend to see things specifically at that moment. I think there have been a lot of very good things, very positive things. Then there have been some things that I look at and say it's going to take time. I said all along it would take us 3 years to really get a good feel on what kind of coach Hubert is. And this time a year ago, people were saying maybe he's not the right guy for the job. And all of a sudden they go on a run. Everyone's saying, oh my gosh, he's incredible. Because North Carolina thrust itself into the realm of being the it school in college basketball. They were. I thought it was interesting when Jeff Goodman asked the question after the Duke game, the way he phrased it, when he said, he was asking Hubert about the fun, the love, and the passion that the kids had last year in that run. And he said how much America loved that team. It's not often that a blue blood makes a run that America loves. I mean, they want to see them play because, you want to see Alabama and Ohio State in football, and you want to see North Carolina and Kansas in basketball. Ultimately, the ratings back that up. However, at the same time, the average college basketball fan would say, boy, I hope Duke goes on a run. I hope North Carolina goes on a run. They're not. But that team had so much to like about it. And Hubert had so much to like about him that they captured the imagination of the nation. So they became the it program. And he's capitalized on the recruiting trail big time. Plus, he's just a damn good recruiter. Yes. He's so genuine, and he has a sales pitch that not everybody likes. That's okay. He doesn't care. He only cares about the ones that do like it. So there are a lot of those things. But it takes 3 years. Mm-hmm. Because 3 years, you're going to go over enough bumps in the road. And how do you handle it? A basketball team is like a car. It has wheels and engine. It has shocks and all that kind of stuff. And how does it withstand going over a bunch of bumps? Let's say your whole basketball season's like in a parking lot at a shopping center, and it's just a speed bumps all over the place, and you have to stop because someone suddenly is crossing, and then you have to go left. You can't find a spot. That's what this season's been. So what is the car like? What is your gas mileage? Is the AC still working? That kind of thing. What's it like when you finish? And I think that that's kind of where things are now. But to judge him fully would be at the end of next year. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a different team next year from a roster standpoint and who gets a lot of the minutes than it is right now. But he's got a huge test. Sometimes the hardest guys to coach are the ones that have been around a few years. You would think it would be easy, but sometimes they're hard. And sometimes coaches try too hard to coach guys that have been around, when sometimes the best approach might be to back off. Mm-hmm. And maybe not call somebody set plays, maybe run more freelance, maybe allow them to just sort of get lost in the game and just flow. And I think sometimes, well, not sometimes, I think a lot of the time we don't see that. Mm-hmm. They didn't run as much that stuff when they were making the push last night. They were just trying to score.
Yeah.
And they scored 51 points the last 14 minutes. Wake had a lot to do with that by fouling way too much. And Wake kind of went into prevent mode. Mm-hmm. And that
prevent defense,
that hurt the Deacons on both ends of the floor, and was partly why I don't think the door was ever kicked open, because Carolina was never going to come back and win that game. But I think that accounts for some of Carolina's productivity. But Hubert's still learning these things. He's been a head coach for 1.5 seasons at this level.
It's different.
His starters have played in the modern era at this level longer than he's been a head coach at this level. Mm. So there's still a lot of figuring out to do and a lot of button pushing to do. And it's incumbent upon him. Yeah. Like I said before, and we could beat this in the ground, but Armando and Caleb, RJ, and Puff and I did not talk to Pete last night. He was also available. I just didn't get around to him. They're all saying the right things, but they're not the head coaches. Ultimately, it's on Hubert, so he's got to figure it out.
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's why he's there. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's why he's there. And you're talking about, I know he's on the staff with Roy before that, but still, it's a lot different. The task he's kind of been put up against at North Carolina with the expectations.
He wasn't making any of those decisions.
Not Notre Dame, AJ. It's just is not.
Yeah. It's not moving over one seat.
No.
Because Hubert didn't come talk to us after any of the games when he was an assistant for.
I don't know if we ever talked to Hubert, and when I was,
he was not held accountable for anything.
No, it was
not moving over one seat. It's not moving over one seat. There's so much more to it. So he is still in a what, Jacob? Process.
It's been a while since we used that P word, I think.
But it's tough for your coach to be in his process when the team is at a point where it should be much better.
Yeah.
And should be contending for something significant. So, again, he's got to grow, and maybe we'll see that as well right now. Maybe they'll have that conversation at 37 minutes. Maybe a lot of that was for Hubert. Mm-hmm. Not just the team, but was for the head coach too. Mm-hmm. He's a smart guy. He's a good man. He's a smart guy. His heart is in the right place. He knows the game. When he starts talking just raw hoops, I really enjoy it because he obviously knows it at an incredibly high level.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
But maybe sometimes people take what he says as being just too emotional, and they think that's all the players get. I don't get that impression in talking to the players. I mean, it's straight up basketball stuff. Fans have their perception because of what they see. And I don't think that he opens up a lot of stuff outside of the emotion to the fans when he talks. And we're facilitators. We're mediators in between between the program and the fans. And I think he likes to go in that direction because they don't want to give away any secrets, for one thing. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's just his personality.
Yeah, it's different from Roy in a lot of ways, which isn't criticism. It just is. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, Roy would have been just blasted. I was telling the story last night to some people after the game. I've had enough of these experiences. Everything I encounter now, I seemingly have a recall from back in the day on it. This is just a few years ago, but the 19 team, what was it? The 19 team that went to Michigan, They went to Michigan in late November 2018 as part of the challenge, the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and they just got ripped apart. They were terrible that night.
Yeah.
And after the game, on the road, the press conference the locker room will often open as soon as Roy comes into the press conference. Steve will say, "Oh, here's Coach Williams. Our locker room is now open." And it was a 9:15 game or a 9:30 game, and some of the guys had immediate deadlines, so they raced down to the locker room and talked to the players. And I stay up there and talk to Roy and asked a bunch of questions because the other North Carolina media was basically gone, and he was just on. Like you could see the smoke coming out of his ears.
Hard on his sleeve kind of guy. Yeah, it wasn't hard to read.
Yeah. So when he finished, I'm walking out. There's a ton of Michigan writers and Michigan media there. A bunch. It must have been 50, 60 in there. A bunch of them asked me, like, is he always like that? I said, no, not really. They're like, good gosh, that was unbelievable. And I'm like, yeah, well, Roy gets pissed and he'll let you know he's pissed.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
So what I saw from Hubert last night was something different. We expected Hubert to talk about how proud he was. They fought back and that they had a chance there, just make a couple more shots. He didn't go there at all because he did that after Pitt and Duke. And quite frankly, never should have been in those situations against Pitt and Duke. They should have won both games. They're better. I think when they play right, they're better than both teams, certainly Pitt at home. No, and I wasn't a big fan of, boy, if we just would have made one more shot, it would have been different. I didn't buy into that, and we talked about that after those games. He didn't do the whole proud of his team thing at all last night.
No.
So maybe that's a good sign. He's not going to go all Roy on you. He's not going to let out the occasional F-bomb like Roy did, or the JC bomb. He certainly ain't going to go there. And he's not going to give us a lot of frickin', and he's not going to tell us that, his wife could have had more rebounds than some of the guys on the team. Like he's talking about whenever he invoked Wanda into a press conference,
he's
after
pissed,
a loss. So he's not going to go in that direction. And people that expect him to be like Roy need to cut that cord as well.
Yeah, it's just not the same. But
I think it's fascinating. I mean, it is not anything any of us expected. I know that our photographer, Kevin Roy, booked a hotel in Houston, like 4 months ago, thinking, well, I can always cancel it, but I might as well go ahead and do it now. I was thinking last night when I was driving home, because Kevin sent me a text after the game last night. It was pretty funny in classic Kevin Roy form. And I'm thinking, man, I wonder when he's going to cancel that hotel.
It probably won't be.
Hope he doesn't forget. Hope he doesn't forget because he'll be out about $1,000.
Yeah, you might want to text him and say, you remember that ticket you bought? You might, not saying do it yet, but you might just want to at least inquire if you still can, because it's not looking too good for Carolina right now. But no, you're absolutely right, AJ. And before we look ahead, because we're obviously going to look ahead to Clemson, Miami real quickly, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor on this podcast. That's the Rogue Shop. Check them out, rogueshop.com. You guys know the drill. If you guys have been watching us, they're a long-time sponsor of us and absolutely fantastic products, specializing in top-shelf, family-grown hip products, CBD, Delta 8, Delta 9. There's a lot of other products and things out there right now that I'm not going to list, but you can see it all on their website at rogueshop.com. Any kind of form you like, tinctures, oils, gummies, candies, flowers, creams, whatever you like, however you like to consume these products, they've got it for you. Use the promo code TARHEELS10 to save on your order. Incredibly high quality stuff. I'm not just saying that. Even the small details down to the packaging is just top of the line to me. Yeah. And that's when you know a company really cares about what they're doing and they really care about the products that they're putting out. And it's exactly what you get with the Rogue Shop. So again, check them out, rogueshop.com, and use that promo code TARHEELS10 to save on your order. Link is in the description below along with the promo code as well. Big thank you to the Rogue Shop for continuing to sponsor TarHeelIllustrated.com and all we do over here. All right, AJ, Clemson and Miami coming up. Clemson on Saturday, that one being the most nearest game for the Tar Heels, 2 p.m. tip-off in the Smith Center. I think obviously the number one positive when you look at just the two games coming up, and Clemson and Miami is obviously you're playing two of the better teams in the league, but I mean, at least you got them in Chapel Hill, right? I think that's kind of the shining light and the optimism that surrounds these two games. Because honestly, AJ, I'm going to keep it very blunt with you. I think if these two games were on the road, it'd be very, very hard to predict that Carolina was going to go 2-0 or maybe even 1-1 in these two games with the way they played over the last few weeks. We shall see. But again, you can look at it two ways. Really, really tough stretch coming up that's going to require some really, really good basketball to win these games, or big opportunity for Carolina to say, you know what, we still got some life in us. We still believe we can make a run and be a really, really good basketball team. And we can show that against some really, really good opponents coming up with obviously Clemson and Miami, the two next for the Tar Heels. So what do you make of the two games coming up? And again, just how big of an opportunity is it? Because I'm trying to be a glass half full kind of guy right now instead of a half empty, because I think that's kind of where the fan base is. And I completely understand it. And I rightly so in a lot of ways. But it's an opportunity for AJ, for Carolina to maybe turn things around, but they have to figure it out now. They can't figure it out on Saturday evening. You got to figure it out now, and they've got to start playing better basketball, sooner rather than later, for lack of a better word.
I think the fan base is an empty glass that fell on the floor and shattered everywhere. So,
and can you really blame them with what it was supposed to be?
I think the schedule is perfect for this team, because if they were to play BC, Louisville, and Georgia Tech right now, will we learn anything?
You don't have any chance to pick up good wins.
You know me. You know me for like 4.5 years now. What is one of my primary missions when I cover a team? I seek what?
It's a good question. I feel like I know the answer, but you put me on the spot right now.
Intel.
Yeah, intel. Yeah.
I seek intel.
Yeah.
So when I cover a game, I cover a team, it's constantly about what I learned. It's a story that constantly is unfolding. So if they were to play Georgia Tech, BC, and Louisville the next 3 games, I don't know how much of that story would really unfold. It would just be
you don't learn a lot, no.
It'd be like you get a book and suddenly there's a couple blank pages in the middle. You're like, what the heck is this doing here? So I want there to be text in there, and I want there to be meaningful text. And you're going to get that with Clemson. You're going to get that hosting Miami. You're going to get that going to State. The next 3 games,
huge.
Would it surprise you if they lost all 3?
Not the way they played the last 3 games.
I think that maybe 1 and 2 makes a lot of sense, because I have no idea how they're going to guard Miami's guards. I have no idea how they're going to do that. And it'll be fascinating to see if they can. Clemson is not great in the backcourt. They're solid, but their strength is with Hunter Tyson, who would be perfect on this current Carolina team, by the way, and PJ Hall down low. I mean, Tyson, I was talking to somebody who knows a thing or two about a thing or two. Was it last night? Or maybe it was at Duke. And they said that they think Tyson and Hall are both NBA players. So that means you got a couple pros. I do think that they match up better with Clemson than Miami. They also present matchup problems for Miami as well, by the way. But none of it matters. The matchups don't matter. How they shoot and all those kind of things, where people say, boy, they got to shoot better. How are they going to shoot better? The minds have to be right, and they have to be connected for them to have any chance at winning any of these remaining games, because going to Notre Dame is going to be difficult, because the Irish can shoot threes. They have length shooting threes, and that could give this team a problem. And Florida State has got their team, basically. They're much better now than earlier in the year, so I would disregard the overall record. Going down there, playing in that place, Carolina could get beaten by those guys as well. So every game that's remaining is a very losable game, especially if the team has the mental connection and approach that it had in Winston-Salem. It must get back to where it was earlier in the year when they hosted NC State and Armando wanted the record. When they had some game, when Wake came in, they really wanted Wake that first game in Chapel Hill. They need to have that mindset up, but it needs to be about wanting them to be great and to their standard, not because of the other team. The other team should not inspire them. This is an older group that should be inspired by getting redemption on themselves. We talk about redemption from last year. They need to get redemption from a 4-game losing streak, and now they're in a 3-game losing streak. I haven't crunched the numbers yet. I'm going to later tonight, but it'll be very interesting to see if there's ever been a Carolina team that had a 4-game losing streak and a 3-game losing streak in the same season that actually made the NCAA tournament. My guess offhand is no, although it's possible. The 90 team that Dean had that lost 13 games, maybe they had a stretch like that. And I don't think last year's team did. So I'd have to go crunch it and look at it, but it's all about them. I wouldn't even really worry. If I'm Hubert, I don't even really worry about Clemson. I don't worry about Miami. You got to do some things. You got to scout them a little bit, but none of that matters. None of it matters if this team doesn't fix its chemistry quickly, doesn't fix its want quickly, doesn't fix its focus quickly, doesn't fix its spirit quickly. and then doesn't use those things to lead to more efficient, consistent play. Mm-hmm. The efficient, consistent play is not going to come if those other things aren't there. Those other things must come first. Yeah. So they have to figure that out. And if it requires, like I said earlier, Hubert making some very difficult decisions, then he has to do that because that may expedite the process.
Yeah. Must wins, I mean, in a lot of ways. I mean, every game kind of is a must win.
They're all must wins.
Yeah. It kind of feels like last year we just were talking about this. Well, I guess it was kind of around the same time. They got to win this game. It's got to. I mean, there's really no other way to look at it. So
they were 17-7 overall at this time last year, and they were 9-4 in league play. So they're 2 games off, both wins and losses. And remember, when they came out of the locker room at halftime on Monday night in New Orleans, they had a 15-point lead and 9 losses. Right now they have 9 losses, and they got their rear ends handed to them last night, and it's February 8th.
Yep.
There is nobody on this planet that predicted this.
No.
Nobody.
Not at all. Not even the most loyal NC State fan out there didn't predict them doing that.
I don't want to name them, but there are a few on Twitter. They didn't predict this.
No, they didn't act like they did, but they did.
They were hoping for it, but they didn't predict it.
They were praying for it, and I think their prayers have been answered so far. But there's no way you predicted it. So
their prayer can be answered in 10 days.
Yeah, it could. It definitely
11
could
days.
be.
When the Heels roll into that hornet's nest.
That's going to be a crazy, crazy game, and we'll be there. But yeah, we got a lot of business to handle before they do that. So I'll just leave it at that before we wrap this one up, AJ. But yeah, big stretch of the season coming up. A lot of issues with this basketball team. Will they fix it? Stick around to find out, I guess. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones for another episode of the UNC Basketball Show. We appreciate y'all watching as always. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell as well. Also, 2 quick things. If you want to be a premium subscriber at TarHillIllustrated.com, you can do that for $8.33 a month. I know it's not the happiest time surrounding basketball right now, but if you want a little more intel, a little more insight, a little more breakdown, access to our premium message boards, and just all types of content that you can't have unless you're a premium subscriber, then go ahead and sign up. Links in the description below. And also, last thing, big shout out to RogueShop.com, continuing to sponsor our podcast. Use that promo code TarHeels10 to save on your next order. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next one.